case in point, Game of Thrones. Yeah, but except everyone forgot about it except for hardcore Game of Thrones or big Game of Thrones fans that like are still pissed about it, right? And that'd be the same for Halo. People who didn't particularly care or just kind of enjoyed it would go, wow, that's shit. And only the dedicated fan base would harp on about it. The difference is, I think another one of the differences is, you can't patch a movie after release. Yeah, there have been, and there's been stuff like director's cut. Oh, do you know the worst occurrence of like director's cuts and stuff like that? No. This is actually the other way around. The director's cut fixed it. This wasn't for Snyder's Justice League. That said, from what I've heard, it was a significant upgrade from the original DC Justice League. Now, I haven't seen either of them. To be honest, I don't particularly care. But the worst example, and in this example, the director's cut's what fixed it all, was Aliens 3. So the third series... Now... The third movie in Alien, so there was Alien and Aliens, and the third one, I don't remember which one it was, I haven't seen it. Basically, it was on a prison planet, right? And I think the director was French, I think it was made in France. Anyway.
For tax purposes.
No, anyway, the big thing was that... It was a prison planet, and it was a similar thing to the early to Alien and Aliens in that they were trying to, in some sense, it was kind of an action horror hybrid. But the thing was, so the thing was, the suits, I don't remember the exact group that did it, but effectively the suits didn't like the idea that, because this was more directly targeted at American audiences. Because this, yeah. Well, no, because of this specific cut, basically what happened was they didn't like the idea of people empathizing with criminals, so they cut almost all of the cases of dialogue between Ridley and the criminals, right? But the criminals were all the side characters, so without any of that dialogue, you didn't give a shit about any of them. So it ruined the entire pacing and feel of the movie. Because they cut the important character bullying and like dialogue that you're supposed to build connections on.
Recommissioning the guard was a radical step, but recent events have made it abundantly clear that the elites can no longer guarantee our safety.
I shall relay.
No, okay, no, like I said, the third Aliens movie isn't good. But it was so much worse.
Politics, how tiresome. Do you know, Arbiter, the elites have threatened to resign, to quit the High Council, because of this exchange.
Oh, you love your Silent Hill movies, don't you?
These are trying times for all of us.
Even as the humans' annihilation filled us with satisfaction, the loss of one of the sacred rings racked our hearts with grief.
Putting aside our sorrow, we renewed our faith in the prophecy that other rings would be found, and see how our faith has been rewarded.
Director Penis, the fan one.
Its divine wind will rush through the stars, propelling all who are worthy along the path to salvation.
But how to start this process? For ages we searched for one who might unlock the secrets of the rings. An oracle. And with your help we found it.
With appropriate humility, we plied the oracle with questions, and it, with clarity and grace, has shown us the key.
You will journey to the surface of the ring and retrieve this sacred icon. With it, we shall fulfill our promise.
Salvation for all.
And begin the great journey.
Once the shield is down, we will head straight to the library. I do not wish to keep the Hierarchs waiting. The human that killed the prophet.
Or more.
Who was it? Who do you think? The demon is here? Why? Looking for a little payback? Retrieving the icon is my only concern. Of course.
And with the advent of things like Netflix and other streaming services, it's become a lot easier and a lot cheaper to do in your own home. Like, I will 100% agree with that assessment, is that there is both there's less investment both with time and money. And in a lot of cases energy as well, because you can't lose a movie unless you lose the disc. Mm. No, it 100% does.
It's the cognitive requirement that comes with watching the movie, because you got to like comprehend what's going on, and the more you do that, the more you start to see the faults with the movie sort of come to life if it's a bad movie, or you pick up the subtle nuances in a good movie. Yeah, and if the movie also said, here's a controller, you need to input these buttons, otherwise the movie just stops and restarts. Hmm.
Well, I'd say that what you were also saying about timing going, if it was a 10-hour movie and it wasn't good, you know, it'd stick with you a lot longer than a bad 1.5-hour movie. That's probably why a lot of people were shitty at The Hobbit. Well, the thing about The Hobbit is The Lord of the Rings, you could have had a fourth. There was enough source material to add a fourth movie. However, I think they chose to cut out. They made decisions on what to cut out, and made their own rendition. The thing is, they did the opposite thing with The Hobbit, where they tried to make it Lord of the Rings 2, in that it was 3 full 3-hour movies. The difference was, well, with Lord of the Rings, that was 3 separate books that... Well, technically, they weren't separate books. It was one large book split into... Anyway, that's not important. There was 3 books, and each book had enough source material for a full 3.5 hour movie. I don't remember how long the extended ones are, but like a full 3.5 hour movie, and they cut stuff out of all of them. And in comparison, The Hobbit, they also did like 2.5 to 3 hour movies. But the source material was one children's book. That was like half the length of one of the Lord of the Rings books. They stretched it way too thin, and they just unnecessarily added bullshit and things that didn't exist in... I still haven't watched... I watched the first Hobbit, and I liked it. It was fine, but I watched the first one and went... You can immediately notice that you're like, there's just stuff in here that wasn't... Because I'd read The Hobbit a couple of times before watching it, and you could tell after the first movie that they were stretching themselves way too thin. No, yeah, sure. And again, like, the movies are fine and you can enjoy them, but it's also a huge investment for people who were fans of Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit, that they'd go, this was 10 hours and it just proved that you were trying to take up more of my time.
You're bringing an active medium into a passive medium.
See, no,
yeah,
see,
you're just setting yourself up to fail.
I don't necessarily agree with that. From the same logic as, again, a bunch of books people watch and people read, and they'll go see the movies, and it's a similar thing. They're like, they want things to follow the books, or at least you can see the logics of the concessions of why people made. This is why I think Eragon is a fine movie. It's one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen, but by itself, it's a fine movie. No, the reason I think is that people are too worried about making a good video game movie, and even with stuff like the most recent Mortal Kombat, which was fun, but they were too busy they put too much focus on putting in like references and shit. The problem is people going, we're trying to make a good video game movie, and that shouldn't be the way you should do it. I'm trying to make a good movie that can stand up to other movies. This is the source material we're working on, but it shouldn't be compared. You shouldn't be working to comparing yourself to other video game movies. You should be trying to make a good movie, and it happens to have the source material of a video game.
What?
No, do you want to know
have
why
literally no
I
idea what's
believe
killing
that's
me.
definitely the case, and why you can definitely, if you focus on making a good series that respects the source material, rather than making a good video game movie or a good video game series. Case in point, Castlevania.